Hello guys, today we are starting a new type of content. In our series of unexplained mysteries that have not been solved in the world, we are in the first video. In the first video, we will examine the Enfield Poltergeist incident. Let's get into the video.
The background of the Enfield Poltergeist case. Over this period, paranormal investigators, mediums, journalists, and members of the public witnessed and logged more incidents of paranormal activity than at any other haunting, making the Enfield case one of the most well-documented incidents of its kind ever. The investigation was led by Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair, who logged over 2,000 inexplicable paranormal occurrences, including pools of water spontaneously forming, toys being thrown around, furniture moving and flipping over, doors, drawers, and cupboards opening on their own, and several sightings of apparition. Not to mention possession, levitation, and voices from beyond the grave, the three things which made this case so memorable, and the reason the case is still talked about today. The Hodgsons lived in a normal semi-detached house, built by the council in the 1920s. The house, numbered 184, had 3 bedrooms upstairs and a kitchen, living room, and bathroom on the ground floor. Luckily for the Hodgsons, at this time Green Street was a friendly place, which meant there was plenty of support nearby when it was needed. Peggy's brother John Burkham lived a few doors up the road with his wife Sylvia, and the Hodgsons also received a lot of help from their next-door neighbor Vic Nottingham and his wife, who was also called Peggy. Janet, who was at the time 11 years old, was believed to be the focal point of the haunting and witnessed most of the incidents, along with her 13-year-old sister Margaret, and to a lesser extent her youngest brother Billy, who was 7 at the time. 10-year-old Johnny avoided most of the incidents, as he was away at a special boarding school. This Enfield case makes Amityville look like a playhouse. Ed Warren, paranormal investigator, a timeline of paranormal occurrences. Below is a list of every milestone, major event, and significant visit to the house. The timeline covers the house's most active period from August 1977 to October 1978, as well as a few isolated events in 1979. Tuesday, August 30th, 1977, where it began. The family had already reported hearing several odd knocks and bangs, but one Tuesday, as the children were settling down to bed, things escalated. Janet told her mom that her brother, Billy's bed was going all funny and moving of its own accord. The Hodgsons soon came to the conclusion that their house was haunted. When August 31st, 1977, the call for help. The following night at 9:30 p.m., Peggy heard a noise coming from the back bedroom. She went into the room to tell the children to stop messing around, but Janet told her that the noise was coming from the chest of drawers near the doorway. Then, Peggy witnessed it herself. The drawers shuffled forward across the lino flooring out into the room. Peggy pushed it back against the wall, only to find that it moved again. The third time she tried to push it back, she couldn't. It was as if an invisible force was stopping it. At this point, the family had seen enough and rushed next door to the Nottinghams. Vic was a roofer, so suspected that there might be something wrong with the structure of the house, which was causing the furniture to move. He went in alone to look around and claims that he heard a distinct knocking sound that seemed to follow him around the house. Thursday, September 1st, 1977, police arrive. Later that night, Peggy Nottingham called the police. At 1 a.m., 2 officers arrived and checked the house over, but said there was nothing they could do to help as no crime has been committed. However, before they left the house, Constable Carolyn Heaps saw an ordinary kitchen chair, which was near the sofa in the living room, began to wobble before sliding about a meter across the floor towards the kitchen as if it was being pulled. Sunday, September 4th, 1977. Another disturbed night. After another evening of strange goings-on, Peggy Nottingham phoned the Daily Mirror in the hope they would put her in touch with someone who could help. They sent along reporter Douglas Bence and photographer Graham Morris, who became a regular at the house. The Hodgsons were next door when the journalists arrived, so took a look around the empty house on their own. They spent all night in the house and found nothing unusual. So, before they left at 2:30, they told the Hodgsons the coast was clear and the family headed back home so the children could be put to bed, accompanied by Doug and Graham. The second they walked back into the house, Lego and marbles started to be thrown around. Both men witnessed the flying objects, and Graham was even hit in the head by a Lego brick which shot across the room at him. On September 5, 1977, Morris Gross's first visit. George Fallows, a senior reporter from the Daily Mirror, visited the house to follow up on the story, this time with photographer David Thorpe. The paper had contacted the Society for Psychical Research for advice and had brought along one of their newest members, an eager new investigator by the name of Morris Gross. Speaking about his first visit to the house, he said, "I found chaos. The whole family was congregated in the house together with the neighbors next door, and there were a lot of very, very frightened people there." He advised Peggy to stay calm and recommended that she made a diary of every incident that occurred. Thursday, September 8, 1977. Morris convinced by the case. Morris was back in the house on Wednesday, again joined by reporters from the Daily Mirror. At 1:15 a.m. on the 8th of September, they all witnessed a loud crash coming from the girls' bedroom. They rushed in to find the two sisters asleep, but a chair which was beside the bed had flipped over and moved a meter across the room. This was enough to convince Morris that the case warranted further investigation. September 10, 1977. The House of Strange Happenings. The Hodgson story became front-page news as the Daily Mirror broke the story and described how the family are living in fear of strange goings-on that are driving them from their home. That evening, Peggy also appeared on a radio phone-in show on London station, LBC. The show, Nightline, aired from 10:30 p.m. until 1 a.m. and Peggy had Morris along with her for support. September 11, 1977. BBC Radio arrived at the house. When Peggy arrived home after the LBC show at 2 a.m., waiting outside for her was Rosalind Morris, a journalist from the BBC Radio for show The World This Weekend. Roz stayed most of the night and witnessed a chair move and a bed shake. She also interviewed Peggy and Morris. Her findings were broadcast that afternoon. On September 12, 1977. Guy Lyon Playfair's first visit to the house. Guy Lyon Playfair, another member of the Society of Psychical Research and an author, had just finished his latest book on the paranormal and was looking forward to a well-earned holiday. But after responding to the SPR's appeal for help, decided to cancel his break and assist Morris in Enfield. On the 12th of September, Guy made his first of 180 visits to the house, which included 25 all-night vigils. September 25, 1977. Refuge at John and Sylvia's. Once again the family were chased out of the house by the strange happenings, and this time sought refuge in Peggy's brother, John Brookhomby's house, while his wife Sylvia was making a cup of tea. A piece from a child's toy appeared in front of her face and dropped to the kitchen counter. This marked the first time any activity happened outside of 280 for Green Street. It seemed the poltergeist was able to follow the family. Advertisement content continues below. October 22, 1977. Rosalind Morris' second visit. The BBC's Rosalind Morris visited the Hodgsons for a second time. This time she was armed with her tape recorder and managed to record several instances of unexplained knocking sounds, at one point capturing 30 rapping sounds in the space of just quarter of an hour. October 29, 1977. Clacton-on-Sea. The frequent paranormal occurrences were keeping Janet awake at night and affecting her school work. The council refused to rehouse the family, but agreed to send them away for a week-long break at Clacton-on-Sea during half-term. The whole family went, including Johnny, who was home from boarding school for the holidays. November 5, 1977. Knock once for no, twice for yes. It was bonfire night, and while the sky was full of the pops and bangs of fireworks, the Hodgsons' house played host to bangs of a different kind. It was the day the family got back from their holiday, and during their time away, Morris had decided to try to communicate with the poltergeist using knocks. He started off by asking the spirit questions like, "Can you tell me what 5 and 5 is?" and after hearing the correct number of knocks, moved on to ask specific questions like, "Did you die in this house?" The spirit was encouraged to knock once for no and twice for yes, which it did until it answered one of Morris's questions with 3 knocks. Morris asked, "Are you having a game with me?" And all of a sudden, a cardboard box full of cushion flew 2 meters across the room and hit him in the face. November 10, 1997, Janet's 12th birthday. Guy invited an Argentinian psychic who was working in London to visit the house. Eduardo Balanovsky arrived armed with a magnetometer, which they used to look for anomalies in the electromagnetic field around the girls. During their vigil, Janet's pillow was twice thrown across the room, and each time Eduardo's equipment showed a change in Enfield's strength. November 12, 1977. I will stay in this house. At 5 a.m. Janet was tipped out of her bed while sleeping, along with her mattress, which landed on top of her. Now wide awake, Peggy decided to try to make contact using a technique the investigators had suggested to her. She placed pens and paper around the house and called out to the spirit saying, "Leave me a message." 5 minutes later, she found a note on the fridge saying, "I will stay in the house. Do not read this to anyone or I will retaliate." November 26, 1977. On the radio. On the evening of November 26, 1977, John Burkham went into the girl's bedroom to check on his nieces. He was amazed to find her asleep on top of a radio, which was on top of a chest of drawers. The Mirror's Graham Morris was on hand to capture the moment on his camera. What made this more incredible was that Janet was out cold, having been given 10 milligrams of Valium by doctors earlier in the day after experiencing a violent seizure of some kind. November 30th, 1977. Bump in the night. On the evening of November 28th, within the space of 5 minutes, Morris found Janet asleep under her bed twice. According to Morris, she was completely limp, as if unconscious. Later that night, Janet and her mattress were thrown onto the floor, and 20 minutes after that, she was found in the corner on the floor, having apparently been thrown a distance of over 4 meters. Tuesday, November 29th, 1977. The first medium visits numbered 184. The Brazilian psychic Luiz Gasparetto became the first medium to visit the house. He arrived in late November, along with his interpreter, Elsie Dubagras, a member of the healing department of Sao Paulo State Spiritist Federation. They offered spiritual help to the family, which resulted in some temporary relief. Luiz is a skilled spiritual artist. He is able to produce drawings and paintings while in a trance-like state with his eyes closed. Something that Janet was clearly impressed by. Friday, December 30th, 1977. Poltergeist art. Janet produced a series of 9 drawings. Each one was described as being very disturbing, and all featured elements of blood, death, and knives. Janet drew these images while in a semi-conscious state, and had no memory of having drawn them afterwards. I think this is the best case this century. As far as documentation is concerned, it may be the best case of all time. Morris Gross, November, 1977. December 3rd, 1977. Pulled from bed. Just after 1 a.m., Janet was again pulled from her bed while sleeping. Later, she described the event as feeling as though she was pulled by her arm. What makes this incident different to other times that Janet was thrown from her bed was that this time she landed outside the bedroom. Peggy said she saw the bedroom door open and Morris found her sliding down the stairs head first, still asleep. Advertisement content continues below. December 5th, 1977. David Roberts' first visit. David Roberts, a student physicist, joined Morris and Guy at the house. He was recommended by a Society of Psychical Research contact of Guy's, Professor John Hasted, a physicist at London's Birkbeck College. David became a full-time member of the team. December 10th, 1977. The voices begin. 2 more Society of Psychical Research members visited the house on December 10th. Dr. John Beloff, the head of Edinburgh University's Psychology Department, and Anita Gregory from North London Polytechnic. While they were there, Morris, as advised by Professor Hasted, challenged the poltergeist to speak. At first, the researchers witnessed a series of whistles and dog-like barks, but before long a gruff, male voice came from Janet. The voice sounded like that of an elderly man, and the researchers were convinced it was not the voice of a 12-year-old girl. The voice identified itself as Joe Watson. The whole conversation was caught on tape by Morris, but the following evening Joe was replaced by the voice of another spirit. Tuesday, December 13, 1977. Bill makes himself known. After making contact with the spirit of William Bill Wilkins for the first time the previous night, Morris brought his son to the house to speak to the now very chatty poltergeist. Richard Gross was a newly qualified solicitor, making this the first time a poltergeist has ever been cross-examined by a solicitor. He asked what happened when you died. The gruff voice answered that it had died of a hemorrhage. I went blind, and I had a hemorrhage, and I fell asleep and I died on a chair in the corner downstairs. Spirit of Bill Wilkins. Wednesday, December 14, 1977. Hugh Pincott visited the house. The founder of the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, ASAP, and Society of Psychical Research member Hugh Pincott visited the house in mid-December to see how his colleagues were getting on with the investigation. Thursday, December 5, 1977. Levitation. One of the most important days at the house, and one that provided some of the most compelling evidence, which was corroborated by the independent witnesses. David Robertson was sat outside the girls' bedroom while automatic cameras were set up inside the room. David was trying to encourage Janet to levitate. To start with, objects including pillows and books started moving around. One red cushion even ended up on the roof of the house. The investigators said it couldn't have been thrown out of the window as the window was hard to open, and it would have made a noise which David would have been able to hear from outside the room. Although the poltergeist, speaking through Janet, said that David wasn't allowed in the room to witness its tricks, it hadn't taken into account those passing by on the street below. Hazel Short was a local lollipop lady. He worked on the pedestrian crossing outside the Hodgson's house, which served the school opposite. At 11:45 a.m. she was returning to work for her lunchtime shift when she noticed a red cushion on the roof of number 184. While she was looking up at the house, she heard a bang and saw a book hit the front bedroom window. Next, she saw a pillow fly across the room. In a statement later, Hazel said, "When I looked up, a candy-striped pillow hit the window as well. That came after the books, and I don't know if I was frightened or not, just fascinated. The windows were still closed. Then after a little while, I saw Janet." The lollipop lady watched Janet appear to levitate inside the bedroom window. She described the occurrence as though Janet was going up and down, as though someone was just tossing her up and down bodily, in a horizontal position, like as if someone had got hold of her legs and back and throwing her up and down. Hazel wasn't the only witness to this event. A local tradesman by the name of John Rainbow was also passing the house that morning. He just saw Janet floating around her bedroom and said he even saw her banging against the window. Could Janet have just been bouncing on her bed? Hazel said, "I don't know if there's a bed underneath that window, but she seems to think bouncing was out of the question. I definitely saw her come up about window height, but I thought if she was bouncing, she'd bounce from her feet. She wouldn't be able to get enough power to bounce off her back to come up that high, but she was definitely lying horizontally coming up and down." December 17, 1977. Matthew Manning visited Enfield. British author and healer, Matthew Manning paid a visit to the house before Christmas. He is known for his psychic abilities and spoke to Bill at great length. While in the house, he also witnessed the microphone of Guy's tape record fall of its own accord and break. That same day, the tape recorder went missing, and despite searching the whole house, no trace of it was found. Later in the day, Matthew and Guy heard a crash and ran upstairs to find that a chest of drawers had been pushed over. His tape recorder, which had been hidden underneath, was now in plain sight. December 19, 1977. Milbourne Christopher not convinced. An American magician and paranormal researcher, Milbourne Christopher visited the house while in London. First, he used his skills to impress the children by performing several illusions. Later he caught Janet sneaking out of bed and peering down the stairs as if planning a stunt. Milburn believed this to be an obvious sign of trickery and wrote the case off as a possible hoax. Friday, December 23, 1977. I done that. 2 days before Christmas, the family woke up to find their two pet goldfish had both mysteriously died during the night. When talking to the spirit of Bill through Janet later in the day, the voice said, "I done that," adding that he electrocuted the fish with spirit energy. On the same day, Morris filled Janet's mouth with water and taped it shut. He then asked Bill to repeat phrases that are notoriously difficult for ventriloquists to say, like bottle of beer. According to the researchers, the water and tape didn't seem to affect the voice's clarity. Sunday, December 25, 1977, Christmas Day. Again, the Hodgson family woke up to a loss. This time it was the family's pet Budgie that had passed during the night, but Bill didn't take responsibility this time. Later in the day, Janet was sitting by the living room window, and one of the curtains wrapped itself around her neck. This wasn't an isolated incident. It happened a total of 8 times during the case. Sunday, January 5, 1978, Peggy's birthday. On the evening of her mom's birthday, Margaret walked into bathroom to find the word shit smeared on wall and shit. While Peggy's birthday fright was an apparition, which she spotted while going upstairs. She said she saw a sort of apparition of the bottom half of a man's trousers, and as I went to look up, I got a very quick glimpse, and it faded completely. The trousers were the type my dad would have worn, the turnover style he used to wear about 1945. Advertisement content continues below. Mon, January 16, 1978. I am Fred. I am Fred. Another message was left in the bathroom. This time it was spelled out using strips of insulating tape that belonged to David Robertson. The tape was stuck to the back of the bathroom door and read, "I am Fred." Guy and Morris conclude that this couldn't have been faked by the girls, as the writing was made up of 20 individual pieces of tape and would have taken too long. Thursday, January 26, 1978. Rosalind visits the Hodgsons again. BBC Radio 4's Rosalind returned to Green Street. This time she was able to make recordings of voices, which were now coming from Margaret too. Janet's older sister started speaking in a similar gruff voice to Janet's after Christmas. Margaret's version of the voice lacked the intensity and duration of Janet's. Sunday, March 12, 1978. BBC Scotland. Janet Hodgson. Stuart Lamont, a news broadcaster from BBC Scotland, visited the house twice. On his return visit, he interviewed the Hodgson family for a nationwide special. The crew captured footage during their time in the house, which showed the poltergeist speaking through Janet. March 27, 1978. Guy Lyon Playfair consults Hans Bender. Hans Bender, a German parapsychologist with a history in researching poltergeists case, met with Guy at the end of March. Hans recommended that Morris and Guy should examine the family's psychological state and consider asking the Church of England to conduct an exorcism. Sunday, April 30, 1978. Fires and shadowy figures. Morris and Guy gave the family some space throughout April, but left Peggy with instructions to make a note of any paranormal occurrences. When the paranormal investigators saw Peggy's diary, they were amazed to find that she had logged 155 incidents, and that apparitions of human forms were becoming more and more frequent. There had also been a worrying trend in the increase of incidents, which involved small spontaneous outbreaks of fire. Tuesday, May 16, 1978. Ed and Lorraine Warren make contact. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Famed American paranormal researcher Lorraine Warren wrote to Morris on behalf of her and her demonologist husband, Ed. In the letter she says that she has been following developments at the house and that she had hoped to visit, but was not able to make it. However, Ed was planning on visiting the house in London in June. The couple eventually made 3 visits to the Hodgson home. Tuesday, May 16, 1978. Enfield Investigation Committee formed. The Society for Psychical Research formed a committee to look into the Enfield investigation. It consisted of Mary Rose Barrington, Hugh Pincott, Peter Halson, and John Stiles. The committee were tasked with interviewing many of the witnesses and reviewing the testimonies collected by Morris and his team. The committee concluded that there was some good evidence for genuine poltergeist activity. However, they reserved judgment on certain claims which weren't observed by credible witnesses. Tuesday, May 30th, 1978. Sticks and stones. Janet and Margaret were in the back garden arguing with the children next door when suddenly what appeared to be a handful of stones was thrown over the fence. Before the girls could retaliate, more stones were thrown from the other neighboring garden. Within minutes, another neighbor showed up. He was angry and accusing someone of throwing stones at him. The girls had no idea where these stones, and at one point even bricks and rocks, came from. Friday, June 16, 1978. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived. Ed and Lorraine finally arrived in London in mid-June, accompanied by a colleague. The couple interviewed the family, including John Burkham. That evening, the girls took part in a live transatlantic link-up with the WVAM, a radio station in Pennsylvania. The discussion was carried out over the phone, as the Hodgsons didn't have a phone in the house. It took place down the street in John's house. Shortly after the Warrens' visit, it was decided that Janet needed some time away from the house and was sent to live in a home run by nuns. Tuesday, July 25, 1978. The Maudsley Hospital. Guy was able to arrange for Janet to be admitted to the Maudsley's Institute of Neuropsychology in South London. Guy states in his book that this was the first time Janet ever crossed the river into South London. While at the hospital, Janet underwent a series of physical and psychological tests to see if there was a medial or psychological explanation for what she'd been experiencing. Advertisement content continues below. Such July 29, 1978. Visiting hours. Guy and Rosalind visited Janet in hospital. While she'd been there, no unusual incidents had occurred and she seemed to be in good health. When asked why she thought the poltergeist had left her alone at Maudsley, Janet said the power can't build up cause there's no one else to help build it up. Friday, September 1st, 1978. There's no place like home. After almost 6 weeks away, Janet returned home after being discharged from Maudsley Hospital with a clean bill of health, but within half an hour of her return she saw a figure in the kitchen. She described it as being like a little boy. On October 2nd, 1978, Dono Gemelig Mailing heals the house. A friend of Guy's recommended a Dutch medium based in Amsterdam. Guy brought him over so that he could put his healing skills to use in the house. Guy said he wasn't sure what Dono, who couldn't speak English, actually did. There was no sort of ceremony performed. He went up to the bedroom, and his own, came down later and implied that was it. Guy said, after he left, things definitely calmed down. On November 20th, 1978, still newsworthy. Despite the fact the house had calmed down, one national newspaper ran a follow-up piece in November 1978, which started with the line, "For more than a year now, strange and seemingly inexplicable events have been taking place in a house at Enfield in Middlesex. The family who live there, and many other people besides, believe that what is happening is caused by a poltergeist." On August 6, 1979, the Warrens return. Almost a year after the activity began to decrease, Ed and Lorraine Warren paid Enfield another visit. During their 4 days in the house, between the 6th and the 9th of August, the Warrens and two colleagues recorded over 13 hours of audio and captured phenomenon such as levitation of objects on camera. They also reported witnessing rocks appear from nowhere and even what they described as the spontaneous removal of the wallpaper in the kitchen. On October 1st, 1979, this house is clean. Since Dono Gemelig Mailing's visit, poltergeist activity at 280 for Green Street had died down, although there were still a few isolated incidents. But even these rare occurrences became even more infrequent after a priest came to bless the house in autumn 1979. Janet said that after the blessing, incidents quietened down, but never stopped entirely while the family were living in the house. What happened next? The Conjuring 2. The family eventually moved from Green Street and Janet made a full recovery, although she doesn't remember all of the incidents which occurred, including those which happened when she was in a trance state. Years after the haunting came to an end, Margaret and Janet confessed to having played with a Ouija board in a friend's shed for years before the incident began. They said they saw the face of a demon appear in the shed's window and believed this could have been the event which started the paranormal outbreak. The sisters also confessed to some trickery, stating in interviews that at times they did fool Morris and Guy with some faked paranormal incidents, but according to the girls, this only happened around 2% of the time. To this day, they maintain that their house on Green Street really was haunted. Sadly, the eldest of their two brothers, Johnny, died at the age of just 14 in 1981. Their mom, Peggy, passed away in 2004, and Morris died 2 years later in 2006, aged 87. Over the last 4 decades, the case has been the subject of books, documentaries, television shows, and movies. It's inspired movies like the classic 1982 Steven Spielberg movie Poltergeist. The word gozer was first spoken by a medium who attempted to make contact with spirits of Enfield. Don Aykroyd later incorporated this into the Ghostbusters script as Gozer the Gozerian. Annette and Margaret returned to the house in 2016, where they had an emotional reunion with Lorraine Warren, now in her 90s. Her husband Ed passed away in 2006. The trip down memory lane took place ahead of the release of The Conjuring 2, which was loosely based on the Hodgson story. Although in the movie Ed and Lorraine's role in the investigation is greatly exaggerated under the pretense of creative license, a more accurate account of the story can be found in Guy's 1980 book, This House is Haunted. His version of the story was the inspiration for the 2015 Sky Living series The Enfield Haunting, starring Timothy Spall.
Yes, friends, we've reached the end of this strange and unsolved mystery. If you want more scary videos like this, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. See you.